Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, published an op ed on Fox News slamming the political power of billionaires in the U.S. and increasing wealth concentration, arguing the country is moving down the path of oligarchy. Sanders, who in November secured his fourth term in the Senate, wrote that the country is diverging in two opposite directions: the billionaire class and the rest of the U.S. We are in a pivotal and unprecedented moment in American history, he argued in an op ed, which was published Friday. Either we fight to create a government and economy that works for all, or we continue to move rapidly down the path of oligarchy and the rule of the super rich. The former two-time presidential candidate slammed the top 1%, calling out Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg, and claiming the trio own more wealth than the bottom half of our society, over 165 million people. This piece from Sanders comes as President elect Trump has selected a handful of billionaires to join his administration, and after many Democrats, along with Sanders, slammed Musk for opposing the bipartisan deal to avoid government shutdown, which faltered due to Trump's allies' opposition, some have pointed to the latter as an example of billionaires' growing influence in Washington. Throughout the op ed, Sanders ripped the campaign finance system, which he regularly brings up, as well as the inadequate healthcare system and billionaire ownership of social media platforms such as Facebook, X, and Truth Social. The senator argued in the op ed that in the second version of America, working class people struggle to attain basic necessities of life as the ultra rich purchase yachts, mansions, and private islands. In this America, over 60% of our people live paycheck to paycheck. Millions work for starvation wages. 85 million are uninsured or underinsured. More than 20 million households spend over half of their limited income on rent or a mortgage, and over 60,000 die each year because they can't afford to go to a doctor on time, he wrote. The Vermont Independent, who caucuses with Democrats, also touched on what he views as increased concentration of ownership on Wall Street and in the media industry, arguing that these, alongside income inequality, are primary points of concern. It is estimated that six huge media corporations now own 90% of what the American people see, hear, and read, he wrote. This handful of corporations determines what is important and what we discuss, and what is unimportant and what we ignore. Sanders issued a call to action against these developments, stating there are two paths forward: the ruling billionaire class, or democracy and justice. That is not democracy, Sanders said about billionaire influence. That is not one person, one vote. That is not what this country is supposed to stand for. In his Gettysburg Address in 1863, President Abraham Lincoln spoke about a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Well, today we have a government of the billionaire class, by the billionaire class, for the billionaire class, he added. I was not expecting him to write an op ed for Fox News. I mean, what can I say? It's really sad that the richest country in the world has most of its wealth being owned by three people. That they have more together than the bottom half of the U.S. So you could put 160 million Americans together, and they would have less money than three people. And I guess what I'm really saddened by is that a lot of this stuff goes hand in hand. We talk about how you'll see a lot of politicians that will rail against spending on social programs. Oh, the deficit and the budget. But then when they have these military budgets that are ballooning to hundreds of billions of dollars every year, right? The last one was over 900 billion. You don't see any of that same frustration or opposition showing up. And the one thing I have to say this article is good for is that it starts to lay out, some statistics. Like I've been aware, and I did a video about the fact that most Americans live paycheck to paycheck, but I did not see where the one about more than 20 million households spend over half of their limited income on rent or a mortgage, and that is true. The cost of rent is one of the reasons why you see a lot of homeless people who are employed, where they work somewhere and then have to sleep in their car to avoid having to piss out some four-digit number of dollars, right? 1,000, 2,000, because they could use that for other utilities like food, like gas, like going to the doctor. So these are, that's something that is very useful from this article. And the really sad part is that you'll see, like I was really disgusted when I saw people simping for billionaires, like when they tried to defend them. Um, there is this idea, and it's with a lot of stuff where if a person is rich, you'll have people who have nowhere near the money, nowhere near the success, that will sit there and defend them and go, oh well, it's okay that this person has this much money, and what, and it's sad because while it is entirely possible for a person over the course of their lifetime to become a millionaire, in some cases several times over, it is virtually impossible without sheer rigging of the economy or doing some other scummy stuff to be able to make $1 billion in your lifetime. It is such a large number that the only way to get it is usually by doing something underhanded, which is the type of stuff we've seen from Musk and Ramaswamy and all the rest of these, pricks. But it's sad to watch regular people defend these bastards because they don't care about you, even if they might say something you like here or there. They're sticking up for themselves. That's why Musk was completely fine with possibly getting the government to shut down because he knows that none of his money is going to get tied up if things get frozen. He won't have to worry about I won't be able to go to work for a week or 2 weeks or however long it takes for them to come to a deal. He's completely insulated from any consequences having to do with any of his actions, pretty much in any field. And it is just insane that you live in a country where people are so wealthy that they can buy yachts, private homes, but at the same time as they're able to buy this stuff, right? You have people who can't even afford groceries or to go to the doctor. It's absolute insanity. Um, we talk about wage increases, we talk about taxing the rich more, or having them pay their fair share. We talk about the fact that these politicians are bought out by and it's like, I'm still amazed that there are people who don't get this. When you have people running for office, and it is a fact that in most cases, the person with the most money wins an election. This last presidential election was not a case of that. Harris had more money than Trump and got creamed. But in most cases, you have the person who has more money winning the election. It's really sad that there are, again, we go back to this thing of like these like simps, right? Who are like, oh, we'll see, that it's okay that politicians take bribes from different groups because they need money to run for office. Like, yeah, that's why we should have public financing of elections where the people are the only ones who can donate to them, so they have to represent the people, or otherwise they can't run for anything because nobody wants to donate to them, and they're corrupt behinds. But no, it's the state of the U.S. is very bad, and I just don't see a scenario where things get better. I think it is really unfortunate that there just aren't that many politicians who ever talk about income inequality, and that is one of the reasons why, as much flack as Sanders gets for, you know, trying to work with Biden and trying to just work within the Democratic Party to have a teeny bit of influence, instead of having the door shut in his face, I will always be thankful for the various different things he's done, because even with this op-ed, you're not going to see any other senators talking about this, or most other politicians discussing it. You know, they're all wrapped up in China and all the rest of this other, social issue crap. But in terms of, who can afford this, who can buy that, how many people can get this, you almost never see it mentioned at all. Hell, like I said, if we had an actual real media system, you would see this this op-ed. Even again, if they wanted to sit there and gaslight, you would see this being talked about on the different networks. Like, hey, is it true that these three people own more money than over 160 million people? But like I said, there's just this. The United States is a very upside down country that has never been able to live up to all that it can be, and unless there is a sharp change in the people and in who they support and vote for, and actually, what issues they pay attention to, I don't think we're going to see a change anytime soon, unfortunately. But I guess to make this a little bit more hopeful, I do like that we get these these different rundowns of statistics, because You will have regular people who have nowhere near as much money as Musk or Bezos or Zuckerberg or Ramaswamy. You're like, oh well, it's okay that they have this. It's like that's not the point. When you live in in the richest country in the world, and a majority of the people who live there are poor, something is wrong with that. And that's all that needs to be said.